Oh, there's something in my chest that I can't hide. When feelings get involved, I'm terrified. 'Cause I've been here before and said goodbye. Oh, are you the one I wish I'd find? Oh, how can I love when I've been hurt 100 times? For you, I'd give it one more try. Wrestle with my doubts. Oh, I leave them all behind, but don't know how. Bury my head deep within the crowd, but I'm reaching for your hand to pull me out. Oh, are you the one when I try look I wish I'd find? Oh, how can I love when I've been hurt 100 times?
Okay. Good evening. Oh, my camera's all. That's what I get for moving it around, huh? All right. So, we are into Deceived, Chapter 2 tonight. I have no idea how long this chapter is. Probably about like the other one was. Which wasn't too bad. It was about an hour. So, all right. Let's jump into it. Deceived. The Old Republic. All right. Malgus let his anger build. With each step he took toward the temple's entrance, the Force responded to his emotional state, caught him up in its power until he was awash in it. He sensed the seed of fear growing in the soldier's guts. I said stop, the lead soldier said again. Do nothing, Malgus said to Alina over his shoulder. These are mine. She let her hands fall slack to her sides and fell in behind him. The three guards spread out into an arc as they approached him, their movements cautious, blaster rifles ready. The entrance to the temple, a 15-meter-tall opening in the edifice's facade, loomed behind them. Who are you? The guard asked. The last word hung in the air, frozen in time, as Malgus drew on the Force and augmented his speed. The hilt of his lightsaber filled his hand, and its red line split the air. He cross-cut the guard before him, putting a black canyon in his chest, continued to swing through the guard on his left, and with his left hand used a blast of power to drive the third guard into the temple wall hard enough to crush bones and kill him. Malgus felt the sudden surge of terror in the two soldiers up on the ledge to his left, felt them take aim in sweaty hands, start to squeeze triggers. He flung his lightsaber at them, guided it with the Force in a flickering red arc that cut both of them down, then recalled the blade to his hand. He deactivated it and hung it from his belt. The roar of a rocket pack drew his attention. On a ledge above the temple's entrance, the Mandalorian rode the fire on her back to a high window on one of the temple's upper tiers and disappeared within. He trusted that she would join him for the combat inside. He checked his chrono, watched the numbers evaporate. 29 seconds. Elena took the station to his right, and they entered the temple. The setting sun at their back reached through the huge doorway and extended their shadows before them, giant dark heralds marking the path ahead. Within the temple was a stillness, a peace soon to be shattered. Malgus's boots rapped against the polished stone floor. The hall extended before them for several hundred meters. 2 rows of elegant columns reached from floor to ceiling on either side, framing a processional down the hall's center. Ledges and balconies, too, lined both sides. Malgus felt the presence of Morgard, a Jedi to his right, his left, and before him. He checked his chrono. 12 seconds. Motion above and to his right, then to the left, drew his eyes. Curious Padawans looked down from the ledges above. Ahead, half a dozen robed and hooded Jedi dropped from the balconies and took station in the hall. Another Jedi descended the grand staircase at the end of the hall. His Force signature radiated power, confidence, a master. As one, the 7 Jedi moved toward Malgus and Elena, and Malgus and Elena moved toward them. More and more Padawans gathered on the balconies and walkways above, sparks of light-side blasphemy flickering in Malgus's perception. The more powerful Force signatures of the approaching Jedi pressed against Malgus, and his against theirs, the power of each distorting the other by its presence. In his mind the countdown continued. The space between him and the Jedi diminished. The power within him grew. They stopped at 2 meters. The Jedi Master threw back his hood to reveal blonde hair graying at the temples, a handsome ruddy face. Malgus knew his name from his intelligence briefings, Master Ven Zalo. In appearance, Zalo was everything Malgus. With his pale skin, scars, and hairless pate, was not. With respect to the Force, Malgus was everything Zalo was not. The 6 Jedi Knights accompanying Zalo spaced themselves around Malgus and Elena to minimize maneuvering room. The Jedi eyed him cautiously, the way they might a trapped predator. Elena put her back to Malgus's. Malgus felt her breathing, deep and regular. Silence ruled the hall. Somewhere, a Padawan cleared his throat. Another coughed. Zalo and Malgus stared into each other's eyes, but exchanged no words. None were necessary. Both knew what would unfold next, what must unfold. The chrono on Malgus's wrist began to beep. The slight sound rang out like an explosion in the silent vastness of the hall. The sound seemed to free the Jedi to act. Half a dozen green and blue lines pierced the dimness as all the Jedi Knights ignited their lightsabers, backed off a step, and assumed a fighting stance. All except Zalo, who held his ground before Malgus. Malgus credited him for it, and inclined his head in a show of respect. Perhaps the Jedi Knights thought the beeping chrono indicated a bomb of some kind. In a way, Malgus supposed it did. From behind, another sound broke the silence, the whine of the hijacked dropships approaching engines. Malgus did not turn. Instead, he watched the events behind him by watching the events before him. The Jedi Knights stepped back another step, looking past Malgus, uncertainty in their expressions. Elena pressed her back against Malgus. No doubt she could see the dropship by now as it roared downward toward the temple. Zalo did not step back, and his eyes stayed on Malgus. The sound of the dropship's engines grew louder, more acute, a prolonged mechanical scream. Malgus watched the eyes of the Jedi Knights widen, heard the shouts of alarm from throughout the hall, then the screams, all of them soon overwhelmed by the roar of the reinforced dropship slamming at speed into the front of the temple. Stone shattered, and the temple's floor vibrated under the impact. Metal bent, twisted, and shrieked. People, too, bent, twisted, and shrieked. The explosion colored the hall in orange. Malgus could see it reflected in Zalo's eyes, and the sudden flame drew the oxygen toward it in a powerful wind, as if the conflagration were a great pair of lungs drawing breath. Malgus did not turn. He had seen the attack thousands of times on computer models and knew exactly what was happening from the sounds he heard. The dropship's enormous speed and mass allowed it to retain momentum, and it skidded along the temple floor, gouging stone, trailing fire, toppling columns, collapsing balconies, crushing bodies. Still Malgus did not move, nor Zalo. The dropship skidded closer, closer, the sound of metal grinding over stone, ever louder in Malgus's ears. More columns collapsed. Alina pressed against him as the flaming, shredded vessel slid toward them, but it was already losing speed and soon came to a halt. Dust, heat, and smoke filled the hall. Flames crackled. Shouts of surprise penetrated the sudden silence. "What have they done?" someone called. "Medic!" screamed someone else. Malgus heard the explosive bolts on the specifically reinforced compartment of the dropship blow out like metal rain. The hatch clanged to the floor. For the first time, Zalo looked past Malgus, his head cocked in a question. Uncertainty entered his expression. Malgus savored it. A prolonged, irregular hum sounded as the 50 Sith warriors within the dropships completed their lightsabers. The sound heralded the fall of the temple, the fall of Coruscant, the fall of the Republic. Malgus flashed the ribbon of a galaxy in flames. He threw back, smiled, and activated his lightsaber. Okay, it's here. Zirid let the fat man fly free and blazed away from Ord Mantell's office. Scanners sweeping the area, concerned that the pilot might have allies in another ship somewhere, but he saw no signs of pursuit. In time, he let himself rest. The pink of Ord Mantell's clouds and upper stratosphere soon gave way to the black space. Planetary control did not ping him for identification. He would not have responded anyway. He did not answer to them, to the exchange, though a serious player in the syndicate face to face. Receiving his instructions as Oren, he flew blind most of the time. He got his assignment, picked up cargo where he was told, then dropped off where he was told. He preferred it. It made it feel less personal, which made him feel less dirty. He took care to return the emphasis on privacy, ensuring that the exchange knew little about him other than his past as a soldier and pilot. As far as he had no friends and no family. He knew that if they learned of Ara, they would use her as leverage against him. He could not allow that, and were any harm to ever come to her... ... Once again, he realized he was holding the stick too tightly. He relaxed, breathed deeply, and glued his thoughts. Then he felt ready. He plugged in the code for the secure subspace channel to communicate with Oren. He waited until he heard the hollow sound of an open connection. Oren did not waste time with the greeting. "The drop went well, I presume?" From his voice, Zirid made Oren as a human male, probably in his 40s or early 50s, though he could have been using G. "No," Zirid said, and a good silence then. "Purchaser's agent, M?" Zirid shook his head. "I don't think so. There were men I hadn't seen before. Pirates, I think. Maybe mercs. I think they killed men and..." "Are you certain?" Anger bled into Zirid's tone. "No, I'm not certain. What's certain in this work? Ever." Oren did not respond. Zirid lassoed his emotions and continued. "I'm only certain that the pilot I expected, a fellow named Aragon there, but his ship was. I'm only certain that 8 men with blasters and hostile attitudes tried to burn holes through me. 8 men. Oren's voice was tight. Not a good sign. What happened to them? He had the impression that Oren was noting everything he said, filing it away in memory so that he could see any inconsistencies later. They're dead. I sniffed out the attack before I sprang it. That seems convenient, man. Zirid stared out the canopy at Ord Mantell's star and controlled the flash of temper. He knew that if Oren suspected him of Double D's story, a word from the man would turn Ara into an orphan. Convenient? What's convenient, Oren, is that lots of deals have been going sour because the exchange won't pay us, including the Hutts. Nothing explains of deals going sour. It tells me the exchange is venting O2. Oren did not miss a beat. Zirid almost admired. If one thought there might be a leak, I also think it an idea to make a play for some goods himself, especially if he had heavy debts. Make it look like an ambush of, say, 8 men. After all, there's a excuse at hand. The strife with the other syndicates you mentioned. Zirid said. But only if he was stupid. You gave me the drop coordinates on Ord Mantell. Send someone there, surveillance droid. You'll see what I left there. But do it quick. Someone's going to clean up that mess before long, I'd wager. So how did you manage to kill 8 men? The discussion was about to take a turn for the worse. They were too close to one of the shipping containers of grenades when it blew up. Oren paused. Shipping containers blew up? Zirid swallowed hard. I lost it in the escape. The rest of the cargo is in. A long silence followed, an abyss of quiet. Zirid imagined Oren flipping through a file cabinet of his mind, cross-referencing whatever other pertinent facts Oren already knew or thought he knew. It wasn't my fault, Zirid said. You'll find who's at fault. You lost cargo. I saved cargo. If I hadn't sussed it out, the whole shipment would have been lost to pirates. It is difficult to recover exploded grenades. Do you agree? It would have been dead. You are replaced. Do you agree? Zirid could not bring himself to respond. I choose to interpret your silence as agreement, Z-Man. Zirid glared at the spot while Oren continued. As you get paid, the lost cargo will be set against that and added to your marker. Already in acceptance, load on the ship and some loans against your gambling. Oren always remembered negative for Zirid. He wanted to punch someone, but there was no one in the cockpit but him. So make me and I very much dislike that. You will make this up to me. Zirid did not like the sound of that. How? By doing a spice run. Zirid shook his head. I don't run spice. That was first. Oren's voice never lost, but the edge on it could have gouged armor. The understanding has changed, contingent as it was on your full completion assignments. You owe a large sum of credit, and you owe me a large sum of peace. You will make up both with a few. That's where you be. Zirid nothing. Could say nothing. Zirid scowled but said, Volta, I will be in touch soon. I have something in mind already. I'll bet Zirid thought but didn't say. The channel closed and Zirid sworn of X. He had finally vented, cleared Ord Mantell's gravity well and its moons, set a course for Volta, and engaged the hyperdrive. I'm a spider now. The black of space turned to the blue of hyperspace. The treadmill under his feet had just picked up speed. Okay. Oh, okay. There's a rush of emotion. She did not name it, memorize it. It's a wash of raw feeling. She was swimming in it, sinking. Something's happening, CO, she said, her voice tight. I don't know what it is, but it is not good. Then a Jalo and the Jedi Knights near Malgus leapt back and up, flipping at the top of the hour heaps and landed inches away. May the Force be with you all, Zalo shouted to his fellow Jedi and lit his blade. Dozens more Jedi poured out of the hall behind him and down the staircase, the blades of their lightsabers visible through the smoke and dust. A forest of green and blue oriflammes. The Jedi did not shout as they charged, but the rumble of their boots and sandals on the floor sounded like rolling thunder. Stay near me, Malgus said to Shalina. Yesterday already. Malgus's Sith charged out of the carcass of the dropship, a hungry, rage-filled beast. The red light of the dust-covered air. Adras, a favorite of Darth Angral, and Malgus led them. Like all of the Sith warriors, save Malgus, a dark mask obscured his face entirely. Malgus used his distaste of Adras to further feed his anger. He had requested that Darth Angral allow him to lead the attack alone, but Angral had insisted that Adras lead the dropship team. Discarding his cloak, discarding the remaining restraints of his rage, Malgus joined the charge. Taking position before Adras, emotion fed his power, and its swell fairly lifted him from his feet. He felt the power of the dark side around him, within him. Blaster bolts across the left and right as tunes of Republic soldiers emerged from somewhere above and to the side and fired into the Sith ranks. They nested deeply in the Force, perceiving the bolts in their trajectory with perfect clarity. Without breaking his blade light, angled at 10 degrees, and turned 3 bolts back on the soldiers who fired them, killing all 3. A soldier had exploded a grenade face in the Battle of Alderaan, so he enjoyed soldiers when he could. Behind him, Alina's twin blasters answered to the left and right. Bolts of their 2 more soldiers. The Sith battle closed. Sith battle lust facing the calm of the Jedi. The floor of the temple, the arena, where centuries of indeterminate strife. Those strong in the Force would survive, and their understanding of the Force would evolve. Those weak in the Force would die. Okay. Malgus sought Master Zalo, but could not make this dust and blades. So he chose a Jedi at random from the crowd, a human Luke Beam, waves of the air and Dopplered as the Jedi and Sith forces crashed into one another and in a chaotic tangle of bodies, lightsabers, and shouts. Malgus augmented his strength, forced a grip on his blade, unleashed an overhand slash designed to split the Jedi in half. The Jedi sidestepped the blow with his blue blade at Malgus' throat. Malgus got his blade up in time, parried, and slammed a kick into the Jedi's midsection. The blow folded the Jedi in half, reeling backward 5 paces. Malgus leapt into the air, flipped, landed behind him, and drove his blade through the Jedi. Rattle last, Malgus sought another opponent. A flash of lavender skin drew his gaze. Alina, she ducked under a saber slash and dived to her side, firing half a dozen blaster shots as she did so. The Padawan who tried to kill her, a female Brek, the horns of her head gilt with colored pigments, deflected off as she closed in for a blow. Alina leaped to her feet, still firing, but the Padawan deflected and drew nearer. Malgus Dwarf, and with a blast of power, drove the Padawan across the hall and into one of the towering columns of stone where she collapsed, blood leaking from her nose. Continued firing, her eyes darting here and there, soft targets. The battle turned ever more chaotic. Jedi and Sith leapt, bounded, rolled, and as red lines intersected with those of blue and green. Blasts of power sent bodies flying through the air against walls, pulled loose rocks from the ceiling, and sent them crashing into flesh. The hall was a cacophony of sound. Shouts, screams, the hum of lightsabers, the infantry walked units amidst revelation. He watched Lord Adras leap into the middle of a squad of Republic soldiers and punctuate and explore energy that cast the soldiers away like dry leaves. Malgus, not to be outdone, picked a Jedi Knight at random, a human female, held forth his left hand and discharged veins of blue light with his fingertips. The Jedi cut us off through the battle, taking 2 Padawans as they went. They caught up to the Jedi Knight and lifted her up. She screamed as the lightning ripped into her. Her flesh made terribly and power coursing through her. Malgus savored her pain as she died. He caught Adras eyeing him and gave him a mocking lightsaber. The high-pitched sound of Alina's blaster drew his. She bounced past and over the female Jedi Knight, firing rapidly. Putting her back to a column, he crouched and saw a target at his eye, winked and signaled behind him. He whirled to see a score or more rushing into the hall from the side room, blaster rifles tracing hot lines through the battlefield. Alina answered the shot with shots of her own. Her jetpack spitting fire, her silver and orange armor gleaming in the fire of the hall. Hovering in the air like an avenging spirit, she discharged 2 small missiles from wrist mounts. They struck the floor near the Republic soldiers and blossomed into flames. Bodies, shouts, and loose rock flew in all directions, while was mounted on her forearm and another group of soldiers. Malgus knew the battle had turned, that it soon would be over. He glanced around, still seeking Zalo, the only opponent in the field worthy of his attention. Before he could locate the Jedi Master, Jedi swarmed him. He parried the chop and mail, leapt over the low slash of an orange-skinned, severed-handed a female human, harming her, then grabbed her by the floor with his force-enhanced strength. "Alara!" said the human male. Leaping high over the male's cross slash, landed behind the Togruta, who parried his lightsaber strike but could not defend herself against a sent her skidding across the hall and into a pile of rubble. Malgus roared. The lust for battle, he would have killed his own warrior were there needed to kill another and hands. He ducked under a slash from the male, lunged forward, and took the Jedi by the throat. He lifted him from his feet and held him suspended in the air, gagging. The Jedi's brown eyes showed no fear, but did show pain. Malgus roared, squeezed hard, then dropped the body and stood over, blade at his side, breath coming hard. The body stood in its eye of the Sith storm. I spotted Master Zalo 10 paces away, spinning his green at him. Another. Lord Adras landed for him, trying to make a kill for himself. Adras slashed Zalo's knees. Zalo leapt over the blow and unleashed a blast of energy, Adras skidding on his backside across the hall. "Fine," Malgus charging through the battlefield. He repeated himself as Zalo must have heard Malgus, for he turned, met his eyes. Alina, too, must have been shouting. She emerged from behind the column, deduced Malgus's intent, and several shots at Zalo. Zalo, his eyes on Malgus throughout, flicked the bolts with his blade and sent them back at Alina. 2 struck her, and as she collapsed, Zalo used a force blast to drive her body against a column. Malgus, in mid-stride, hemmed and stared at Alina for a long moment. Her lavender body crumpled on the floor, her eyes closed, 2 black circles marring the smooth, purple field of her flesh. She looked like a wilted flower. Anger filled him, overcame him. A shout of agony burst from his head, shattering the nearby column, sending a rain of stone shards through the room. He returned his gaze toward him, his rage and power surging before him in a palpable wave. Another Jedi stepped in front of him. Malgus barely saw him. He simply extended a hand, pushed through the Jedi's insufficient defenses, his throat with force, and choked him to death. tossing the body aside Zalo. Zalo, for his part, moved toward Malgus. A Sith rifle from his left, but leapt over Sith's side, mouth closed. They halted at 1 meter, studied each other for a moment. A human male Jedi Knight separated from the swirl of battle and stabbed. Malgus sidestepped the blue line of the blade, punched the man over, and for Zalo bounded forward and interrupted the downstroke. Zalo and Malgus stared into each other's faces and fell away. There was only Malgus in his rage and Zalo at his blades sizzling in opposite. Each was forced to press against the strength of the other, but neither had advantage. Mounted rage into Zalo's face. Only a brow and the tight line of his mouth betrayed the tension behind Zalo's tranquil expression. Feeding off the anger from Alina, Malgus shoved Zalo away and let a lot of overhand slashes at Zalo backed off, parrying, unable to respond with no. Malgus tried to split Zalo's hand. Hit Zalo in the chest, sent him backward 10 meters. Zalo flipped and landed upright in a crouch near 2 of Malgus's Sith warriors. They lunged for him, and Zalo parried 1 blow, leapt over the second, and spun a rapid circle, cutting down both Sith. Malgus, burning with hate, flung his lightsaber at Zalo. He guided his traveling path but Zalo's momentum of his second Sith leapt with the blade. While Zalo was still in the air, Malgus unleashed a burst of he led her prone. Malgus did not hesitate. He mounted the column of his anger, shouting with hate, and leapt 20 meters into the air towards Zalo. Mid-jump, he used the his blade to his hand, took a reverse 2-handed grip, and prepared to pin Zalo to the temple. But Zalo rolled out of the way at the last moment, and Malgus's blade sank to the hilt in the stone of the temple's floor. Zalo leapt up and over Malgus, landing in a crouch, reactivated his lightsaber, and pelted across the floor back at Malgus. Eschewing speed braced for power, Zalo used a flurry of rapid strikes, slashes and lunges. Malgus parried 1 blow after another, not finding to mount his own counterattack. Lunging forward, Zalo slashed, crossed Malgus parried, and Zalo slashed the hilt of his saber into the side of Malgus's jaw. A tooth dislodged, and was knocked askew. Malgus tasted blood, but he was too deep in the force for the blow to do real. He staggered backward a step, as if the blow had stunned him. Seeing an opening, he stepped forward and cross-cut for Malgus's throat, as Malgus knew he would do. Malgus turned the blade vertically, the blow, and spun out of the blade lock, reversing the lightsaber during the spin. He rode it into Zalo's abdomen and came out the other side. Zalo's expression he aligned. He held Malgus' eyes, and Malgus saw the flames of the burning temple reflected in Zalo's green irises. "It is all going to burn," Malgus said. Zalo's brow furrowed, perhaps with pain, perhaps with despair. Either way, Malgus enjoyed it. He waited for the light to disappear before Zhur allowed the body to fall over. Okay. The shock hit Aaron with little warning, blaster shot. Her body spasmed. The tranquility bracelet in her hand, the bracelet out, snapped in her clenched fist, and the tear-shaped bits of coral rained on the floor. She rolled over, moaned, sank. Her room spun. Her legs dissolved under her, and she fell slipping, falling. A fist formed in her throat, throttled the one release, and allowing it loose only as an aborted, grief-ridden wail. The sharp swallow expelled her breath, hitch and sympathy as he took his final breath. Life, usually so bright in her mind's eye when she felt the force, usually so close to her own line, vanished from her perception. Beside her, sharp, surprised intake of breath told her that he had felt something too. Despite her pain, the rising despair, the reality settled on her immediately. She had seen it in the eyes of the Sith male. Excuse me. His voice seemingly far away, squat and fat with ugly possibilities. Her long hair dangling before her face. Across the Sith were standing, knowledge in their eye. It does say knowledged. Well, no, it does. Okay. Knowledge in their eyes. They're betrayed, she answered. Yes. Sorry, I accidentally skipped a page here. She left it unsaid that her master, the man who had been a father to her, was dead. She was surprised to find her legs sturdy. I stood up straight. Near her. No, not people. They were statues. Alderaanians. She was on Alderaan for peace negotiations with and she had fought the Alderaan before, during the battle for the planet. She would do so again now. But Sio's voice, his doubt, did not erode her certainty. I know, she spat. The Sith knew too. They had known all, see it in their faces. Her views still consisted entirely of the two Sith and nothing else. A roar filled her ears, the crash of grief and burgeoning rage. She heard a voice calling her name from some distant place, repeating it as if it were an invocation, but she paid it no heed. The Sith eyed her, their standards ready for combat. With the same contemptuous sneer, the curve of his thin lips uglier than the scars behind his Aaron, it was Aaron. They knew. The Sith knew. Thinking as much of herself. What was happened? She did not bother to answer. She fell into the Force, drawing on its power. Time seemed she felt as if she existed outside herself. Her body moved across the antechamber, her boots scattering the coral of her bracelet. Violence filled her mind as she moved among the statues of peace. Aaron, so called, do not, Sio called, not reach for her lightsaber. Her need would not allow for such. She would avenge Master Zalad's death with her bare hands. No death for you through the wall of her gritted teeth. So recognized in passing that Master Zalad not approved. She did not care. It was too deep, too fierce. Expression in violence, and the two Sith in the focus of its need. The Sith reached for his lightsaber. Before he could activate it, Aaron had a power that lifted deep and blew into the wall. Two Alderaanian statues, caught in the effect of her power, slammed into the wall to either side of the Sith chunks. The Sith must have used the Force to cover impact, for neither appeared hurt. Both leapt to their feet and spaced themselves apart for combat. Hilts swinged hands, and their lightsabers made red lines. The male held his head in an unusual style, waiting right in the balls of feet, though held hers low and variant style. Behind her, Aaron heard the sound of Sio activating his blade. She did not slow her advance. Using the Force, she jerked the nail hilt from his hand into her own grasp. Then she tossed it aside, and his sneer melted in the heat of his surprise. She advanced on him, heedless of the woman, imagining the feel of her hand on his throat. He answered her approach with a blast of power, but she made a V with her hands, forming a wedge with her will, and deflected the blast to either side of her. More statues toppled, shattered. The female, caught in the blast, thrown back 10 paces. She closed to 5 paces. 4. The male Sith took a fighting stance. They would fight not with lightsabers, but with their hands. Aaron used the Force to augment her strength, her speed. She felt it flow within and around her, turning her body into a weapon. Aaron Lanier, a commanding voice said. Master Darnalla's voice. Jedi Knight Aaron Lanier. Who called her? Aaron, stop! The combination of Darnalla's and Sio's voices penetrated the haze of her emotional state. She faltered, slowed, stopped. Reason followed its way past her emotional turmoil, and she gave voice to her thoughts. Without taking her eyes from the male Sith, she said, The Sith have betrayed us, Master Darnala. The negotiations were a ploy. Darnala speak for a moment, then you tears ought to fall from Aaron's eyes, but she forced them back. She named Master Darnala's next words hit Aaron like a punch in the stomach. Listen to me, Aaron. I know now. It may not make sense. Coruscant, the heart of the Republic, had fallen. What? Co asked. How? That can't be. She must have misheard. She turned from the male Sith who had captured his sneer to face the leader of the Jedi delegation. Master Darnala stood in the archway, her skin a deeper red than usual. Senator Amris and a senior Jedi Knight, Satele Shan, flanked her. The senator, a Syrian, whose rough white hair topped the cliff of his towered over the other two, his face but focused on nothing. He looked lost. Satele, on the other hand, looked as ion coil, straight ahead, her auburn hair mussed, the veneer of her neutral expression unable to mask the emotion. Neither Amris nor Satele seemed to notice that both looked dazed, blank-eyed, refugees wandering between events. Only Darnala seemed completely clasped before her, her eyes noting the details of the room, the broken sculptures, the position of Aaron relative to the two Sith. Aaron wondered what had transpired in negotiation. For a fleeting moment, hope rose in her. Hope that her fellow Jedi had perceived the Sith betrayal, arrested, or killed the Sith negotiators. But that hope faded as the lead Sith negotiator emerged from the chamber. Darnala. His wrinkled whole mugdness felt it leaked out around the raised corners of his mouth. His dark hair combed back widow's peak matched his dark robes and eyes. In a haughty baritone he said, "It can, and it is, Coruscant." Still visibly tense, her lance catched into a fist. Amris sagged. Darnala closed her eyes for a moment, struggling to maintain her calm. As of now, Lord Barriss continued, Coruscant belongs to the Empire. How? Aaron began, but Darnala raised a hand. Say nothing more. Say nothing more. Aaron swallowed the question she wished to ask. Your lightsaber, Darnala said to Co, and he did. The female Sith did the same. What happened here? Lord Barriss asked, his eyes on the Sith brother and sister in the room. The male Sith bowed, used the Force to pull his lightsaber hilt to his hand, and hooked it to his belt. A slight disagreement, Lord Barriss. Nothing more. Please forgive the time. He stared at the male Sith for a moment, then at the female. It is well that the disagreement did not lead to bloodshed. We are, after all, here to discuss peace. He seemed almost to burst laughing at him. Satele, as she might a leash, to keep too close to Barriss. This entire proceedings, Darnala said, and took Amris by the arm, but Amris would have none of it. His voice gained volume as he gave vent to his anger. You did not come here to discuss peace. You came here to sneak attack. You are dishonorable liars, worthy of... Senator, Darnala said, and her tone must have reached Amris, for he fell silent, coming hard. Lord appeared untroubled by Amris's outburst. You are mistaken, Senator. The Empire is here to discuss peace. We simply wish to ensure that the Republic be able to our terms. Should I understand your outburst to mean that the Republic is no longer interested in negotiating? Well, Amris reddened and sputtered. Darnala broke in. Negotiations will continue, Lord Barriss. You're ever the voice of wisdom, Darnala, Barriss said. The Empire will expect a return to the negotiation table at this time tomorrow. If not, matters will go poorly for the people of Coruscant. Darnala's skin darkened further, but her voice remained placid. I will contact you tomorrow. I look forward to that. Rest well. Amris cursed Barriss, and Barriss pretended not to. The public entourage picked its way through the rubble among the rubble in their heart Aaron felt the mocking eyes of the snake could before leaving the coral beads from her shattered bracelet. The end of the chapter. It makes me feel like Darnala is. Ugh, I don't know. I get a feeling like he's on it from not just like I don't know. Maybe diplomatic and wants to wait for him to kill the piece of shit. But who knows? We'll find out maybe next time. Probably not. That'll be that for tonight. See you. Uh, who's around? Slitzer. Um, um, yeah, no. I'm not gonna tonight. I'm just gonna call it. I will